Hi. Yeah, the episode you're about to watch is tough. It's a hard one. I am not exactly happy with it, mostly because of the way I move. Now, the episode itself is on flow, and some of the difficulties I'm having with a messer. It's my first time working with it for real. But the real issue is I have a monitor in front of me so I can frame everything so that, you can look around and see, I'm in frame and, everything except for the thing I want in that frame. And the problem is I got to look at myself walking up to the camera. And, I'm look huge and I look like I'm stumbling. And in some cases I might very well be stumbling. But that's just how I walk. Now, the way I walk and the way I feel how I walk are two entirely different things. The internal gyroscope that I have is actually pretty darn good. It takes a lot for me to fall down. It takes a lot for me to lose my balance until I see it. So some of the takes, were a little rough. It took me a couple of times to get around it. The thing that I'm mainly feeling is embarrassment. Because, how often do you see yourself? So that's what we're dealing with. And if I seem like I get a little hesitant or I trail off or whatnot, or try to catch myself in the thought, that's why. And I was going to trash it and do it again, but there's something really important here. This channel is about inclusion. This channel is about everybody can fence. Well, now you can see why I'm into that topic. It's hard. It's hard confronting the reality of your situation versus what your internal monologue, gyroscope, and writing staff are telling you. So, there you are. Without further ado, flow. Hi, it's your friendly neighborhood fencer, and I'm here on location. The weather is going against me slowly as thunderclouds move in, but I'm going to give it a try anyway. Now, normally I would be in a park or in some fancy arena. I know where there is one. But I'm in the stellar location of my backyard. So, the entire studio got packed up and brought out here so that we could partake. Now, today I want to talk about something that I'm not exactly happy about. Namely, this. This is a messer. The blade is by Castile. By the way, Sam does great work, Castile Arms. Handle, pommel, also by Castile. The hilt is from a popinjay piece that I had. And I've repurposed it onto the messer because I wanted to start using it right away. And one of the characteristics of a messer that's really important is they had a nagel that came off of the side. This has a ring, which I'm going to use in the same manner. Now, there are messers I've seen that have a ring, so this is not, unheard of. The hilt, however, is incorrect because it should be a knife hilt, and there are certain aspects of a knife hilt that are very important. Now, let's talk about what the messer is itself. So there were two kinds of messers. This would be a gross messer, or big knife. There was another style called a lang messer, which was two-handed, and it was an even longer knife. And these were a civilian weapon. They were kind of designed to get along around the don't murder your neighbor laws. You weren't allowed to carry a sword in certain places, but you could carry a knife. I think this pushes the limit. Anyway, on to what the problem is. This is an up-close, tight fighting weapon. It seems that in my laziness, I've ceased to become an up-close and tight fighting person. So the messer is providing me with some difficulty. Now, part of that difficulty is what I would call flow, and that's what I'm going to do in a moment. I'm going to back up and I'm going to do some flow drills with the Messer to show you how I work through learning the balance of a new weapon. By the way, this thing is so spanky new to me. I've only fought one person with it, which is how I know I am just awful with it, which is also a great opportunity. Sometimes you want to be bad at something so that you can practice and get better. Anyway, let's get on to the flow part. Now, due to the magic of editing and a couple of wipes, I'm now back here. So, the Messer. The guards are pretty simple. I'm putting my left foot forward, right foot back, hand goes down, basically in terza, other hand goes up. This hand is very important with Messer fighting because you're actually going to be grabbing and throttling another human being with it. Now, guarding high, thrusting in, guarding low, block, block. So flow is an important thing with any weapon because you need to be able to get to point A to point B. Now, if the weapon is fighting you when you first try it, which like it was with me, you've got to work on that flow. So some of the exercises I do, I get this from my Kenjutsu days. I'll start here on the shoulder, just because I'm lazy and my back hurts. But I bring the blade out and I drop it down and I bring it up like this. I'm working in a circle. I'm not trying to hit anything. I am keeping my hand at 90 degrees to the rest of the Messer. So I'm doing this, get a feel for it. Switch the feet. Right foot forward, up. And you can tell this is my tight side, so it's not working very well. And bring it down, turn around, bring it up, bring it up. And you can go back and forth. And you got to loosen your hand up with this kind of thing. And this will loosen up your shoulder and kind of give you a good idea of where the thing wants to go. Now you can also do it left, right. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And I'm not trying to strike with this. I'm just trying to let my wrist, my shoulder, my back, my legs get used to it. Switch back. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, next come the Molonaise. Now, the important thing about Molonaise, and this is an important one because they will translate into cuts in the future. You want to have the Molonaise in front of you. Now, a lot of people do them here. This doesn't actually do you any good because, well, this is right here. It's going to get smashed, cut, chopped, burned, lit on fire, torn off, and you're going to get beaten to death with it. So when you do a Molonaise, bring it out in front of you. Bring it out in front of you. Bring it out in front of you. There you go. There you go. There you go. So that's a Molonaise out in front. And then you can kind of take your flow drill that you were doing before. Let's go right foot forward. Up in front, around, down in front. Up in front, down in front. So you get this kind of action going. And I'm trying to keep this in line with my target. Same thing with left to right. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And I'm trying to cut this up a little short so that I can come right back. But notice that I'm not going terribly wide. I'm not over here. I'm not over here. I'm cognizant of the fact that between my shoulder blades is where I'm going to get injured, where I'm going to get hit. So I try to cut between the two. Put your hip into it, put your hip into it, put your hip into it, and then you can change direction. Hip into it, hip into it, hip into it. It's the drop of the hip that makes a cut really work. Now, all that said, it's absolutely pointless if you don't move. So I'm going to take a step back here. And it's actually, I hate this lawn because it is about as lumpy as you can get. But it's good for learning to move. So starting in a position like this, take my weight off my front foot and step forward. That's it. Now I'm not taking guard, I'm actually moving, because then the next step is here. So this is a passing step, and I can pass back and forth. And I know this looks really awkward. I'm trying to stay upright on this lawn. Also, step to the side. And footwork is a fascinating thing, because footwork, it really is a very simple idea. Take the weight off of one side, move the foot in the direction, the other foot in the direction you want to go. So if I want to go forward with my right foot, I'm going to put my weight on my left. I'm going to step forward. Now I can take a big step, which I don't like, or I can take a little step, which I do like. Now, walking is quite simply when you take the weight off of one foot, my left, step forward with the right, weight goes on that foot, and then the other foot gets freed up. Now the crazy thing is, I'm walking a little stilted right now. Well, the reason for that is I'm trying. But when you're just moving, you're not actually trying that hard. You know how to move, you know how to walk. You make micro adjustments for different terrain and things like that. I'm having difficulty because, to be quite frank, I'm on camera and it's really uncomfortable. So I'm going to step back here. Now, other steps that you have, and I like to, when I'm doing the footwork drills, I like to have a weapon in my hand. Not necessarily up or in guard, but it does give me an idea of what I can do. And this is also part of the flow drill. So I'm going to make a diagonal step to the right. Just that simple. A diagonal step to the right. Now I can let the back foot go with me, or I can bring it up to it, or I can leave it in place. Leaving in place doesn't always strike me as the best thing. You're a little awkward, but take that diagonal step and just bring your hand up, your hand up. Well, that's a thrust. And it can be deep. It can be shallow. I find the shallow steps are some of the best ones. And you don't have to raise your hand up that high. If you're in position, you can be in a casual, I got a weapon out, but I'm not really going to do anything. By the way, in Kenjutsu, this is called Yama Mountain. And here we go. That's a rib. And I can go the other way. Notice these techniques are not very complicated. They don't need to be. There's no reason to have them be complicated because all you're doing is hitting another person. Yes, with Messer there are locks, there are throws and things like that, but that's outside the scope of this. And right now outside the scope of my skill level because I haven't studied it that hard yet. I do know that there's a beautiful grapple in Messer plays, I think in Leknar, that has for demos where you lock a person up and you get them on the ground, you have the Messer levering them in place, and you're playing backgammon with someone else, not the person you've locked up. It's a way to impress people. Now, guards. Guards are complicated. They are a momentary thing. Like Yama's a guard, low, medium, high, outside, high, low. But you shouldn't hold them for too long. Because if you sit, and anybody can tell you this, if you sit in a guard, your opponent goes, oh, their elbow's hanging out. I think I'll hit that. Or, oh, that off leg isn't moving, it's got all its weight on it. I'll hit that. So, guards should be something that you shift through in accordance with the need of the moment. And the need of the moment is basically the position your opponent is. If your opponent is in, and I'm going to use an Italian term here because I don't have the German terms memorized. Opponent's in terza, go to secunda. you can drop down. Or go to quarta, because they're going to be coming in that direction. You block off. Now in Saviolo, they call this concept warding. Oh, bugs. In Saviolo, they call this concept warding. Luke, the student, asked the master, what ward would you put me in if I had to go get beat up by somebody later tomorrow? He goes, oh, I would place you in this ward. Now, ward is one of those interesting terms because it can mean a defensive position, like punta reversa, or I forget, terza. I can't believe I forgot that. That's embarrassing. Anyway, put you in a ward. That's a position. There's another concept of a ward, which is, and I don't know if this is because John Fiore probably wrote the book, but there's also talk of a ward as a sequence of movements. Well, I would teach you this ward where, you start here, your opponent moves, you make a circular step to the right, throw an imbricata over his guard, he makes a circular step to his right, and you have to make a circular step with your back foot, followed by your right, and a staccata. A staccata is a thrust under the guard, an imbricata is a thrust over the guard. And so it's this back and forth, over, under, over, under, over, under, which makes up Saviolo's ward. It can be kind of confusing. And again, I don't know if it's because the actual author didn't quite grasp the concept and was shorthanding it, or if that's how they actually talked about it. One of those ponderous little questions. So, back to flow. How can these things like warding, guards, and such help with flow? Well, to be quite frank with you, you've got to end up somewhere. So, you take a guard, and if my opponent is about where the camera is, I'm going to step to advantage. I'm going to change my position slightly. And say they move to this side of me. I can move my foot back and turn, taking another guard. And so being able to transition between positions is really important. And you have to be conscious of where the weight is. Like in that last one, I end up front loaded. Now you go, well, that's kind of dumb, but not necessarily. And again, apologies for the terrain. So that's how going through guards can help with flow. Now, I don't have the right, this is not the right sword for Italian, but I can kind of show you a flow drill that I do with the actual Italian guards. So, I start here. Step forward, sword comes up, terza. And I'm bending at the hip a little bit. Hand comes up. And then I push my hip up, go to prima, secunda, back to terza, turn my hip, quarta, back, and get into the lower guard. That's a simple little thing. And we're actually going to revisit that later in another video on kata, which is going to be fun because I'm going to have Japanese stuff and Italian stuff and some Spanish stuff. We're going to mash it all together into a big, no, we're not going to mash it all together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some forms and how you can use forms to figure things out. Anyway, that's been today's episode of Terza TV. I hope you got something out of this, and I'm really glad we're beating the rain and the wasps and such. Anyway, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you like what you see. As always, I will see you in the list.